بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Let's begin by reciting Al-Fatiha to our brother Diya, our sister Yusr, our sister Razan, with the intention that Allah forgive them, and also with the intention that Allah bless their family and their friends, and that He make it easy for them to respond properly to this event, this horrible happening, and to go forward in the best of possible ways. Al-Fatiha. May Allah protect us all and protect our communities. Today we want to talk about backbiting, ghiba. Ghiba, backbiting, the word in Arabic comes from ghaba yaghibu, which means to be absent. And that's because of the fact that backbiting usually takes place in the absence of the people that are backbitten. This is generally the way it happens. Sometimes it might actually happen in the people's presence and still be ghiba, but as a rule it doesn't happen that way. In fact, often people who do ghiba of people in their absence may actually praise them in their presence. One of the characteristics of ghiba is that it's always true. And ghiba is not a falsification about the person. It is to point out things about them that are actual qualities they have. It's just that it's not appropriate to do that. It's not polite to do that. It is not honorable to do that. And these are things that would bother that person if they were told. And they are things that that person would like to be concealed, or at least not to be spoken about. So that's ghiba. There's another quality which is even worse, and that is buhtan. And buhtan we translate as slander. And that is when we say things about people that are not true. They are things that are hurtful, but they're not true. Okay, so that's buhtan. And also Imam al-Ghazali warns us about the danger of ifk. And ifk, which occurs, the word occurs many times in the Quran. All of these words occur in the Quran. We can call defamation, according to this definition, it is a wicked form of lying. But Imam al-Ghazali defines ifk as relating what others have said about people, whether that is backbiting or slander. So ifk can take in both types. But it is when we hear someone speak in a way that is not proper about others, and then we pass the word on. And that's also a great evil. May Allah protect us from all of that. All of these are very grave. They are among the most grave of sins. And all of them are common offenses that most of us, if not all of us, do from time to time. And they can potentially destroy us utterly. One of the dangerous things about backbiting and about slander and about ifk, defamation, is that most people who do those things are not aware of it. And this is usually because of ignorance, and often it's because of negligence. So they haven't been warned about it. They haven't had that warning repeated. It has not been emphasized to them. And maybe it's also a common thing to do. And so they engage in it as if there was nothing wrong with it. Of course, one of the things that people will often do who commit backbiting is say, but what I said was true. And again, as we said, what you say has got to be true. But it also must not be harmful. And this is what backbiting is. It's a type of harmful truth that should never be said unless it's absolutely necessary to do so. Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا أَيُحِبُّ أَحَدُكُمْ أَنْ يَأْكُلَ لَحْمَ أَخِيهِ مَيْتًا فَكَرِهْتُمُوهُ. This is one of the really powerful verses in the Quran that expresses the abhorrence of this deed. And do not backbite one another. Would any of you love to eat the flesh of his dead brother? Can you think of anything more horrible? That's the point. Surely you would abhor it. And just as you abhor that, you must abhor backbiting. That's the point. You would never think of that. That would be impossible. No one could ever make you accept that. So why do you accept backbiting? Why do you think that it is so light? Because it's not. In the eyes of God, it is just like eating the flesh of your dead brother or sister. It's important also in the verse, as commentators have pointed out, that the person who is backbitten remains your brother or sister, despite the fact that you may not like them, you may in fact hate them, you may despise them. That may be what motivates the backbiting, yet this is your brother. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. The believers are only brothers. Only the believers are truly brothers and sisters. The grammatical structure of the verse is complex. And those of you who know Arabic can feel that when you read it. It has things unspoken in it. And that structure implies if such a thing as eating the flesh of your dead brother or sister were offered to you, you would abhor it without any question, without any reservation. It would be impossible for you to deny its loathfulness, its abhorrence. So just as you would utterly abhor and reject that first scenario, that unthinkable, unspeakable scenario, then you must also loathe and abhor the second scenario, which is to backbite your brother. And again, as we said, understand that archetypically, in the eyes of God, these things are equal. And in the next world, you will see that. So may Allah enable us to watch our tongues and enable us to avoid superfluous speech, talking about things that don't concern us, being contentious, being argumentative, being disputative, but especially avoid backbiting. The Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالْغِيبَةِ فإن الغيبة أشد من الزنا فإن الرجل قد يزني ويتوب فيتوب الله سبحانه عليه وإن صاحب الغيبة لا يغفر له حتى يغفر له صاحبه. So the Prophet said, the Messenger of God said, beware of ghiba, avoid ghiba, backbiting. For ghiba is more severe than zina, than fornication or adultery. A person may commit zina, but then do tawbah, then turn back to Allah, and Allah, exalted be He, forgives that person. But the person who does ghiba, backbiting, shall not be forgiven until the one that he or she backbit forgives him. So it's very, very difficult. Very difficult. It said it was revealed to Moses, من مات تائبا من الغيبة فهو آخر من يدخل الجنة ومن مات مسرا عليها فَهُوَ أَوَّلُ مَنْ يَدْخُلُ النَّارِ. It was revealed to Moses, whoever dies while repenting from riba shall be the last to enter the garden, because he or she has to be excused by all of those people. And that's not likely to happen, certainly not to happen easily. And he will also have to give away his hasanat, be they few or many, to those people that he has backbitten. So he probably will be left with none. And then he will take their bad deeds and be cast into the fire. So he will be the last to enter the garden. And it presumes that he will go to the fire and then come to the garden. And the one who dies persisting in riba, backbiting, he will be the first to enter the fire. So these are not moral niceties. And the believer weighs all moral things very, very carefully. And he takes them seriously. As Zabidi, who is one of the greatest commentators on the Ihya, he says, and how unlikely it is, how extremely unlikely it is that the person that you backbit will forgive you. Al-Ghazali tells us the story of a famous person in Sunni Persia, whom we might call a celebrity. And one of the upright people of the city backbit him. He said true things about him, but things that he knows that he shouldn't have said. There was no reason to say that. So he sent a special messenger to that celebrity and said, ask him to please forgive me. And what did the man say? Not on your life. He said, not on your life. He said, in my sahifa, in my scroll of good deeds and bad deeds, we all have one. I don't have a single hasana. I don't have a single good deed that is better than your having backbitten me. So how could I possibly erase it? I will keep that there. That's my investment for the Day of Judgment. So may Allah enable us to take this really seriously. We mentioned before in talking about speaking that in Islam we have 6 major maqasid, ultimate objectives. Let's repeat them. I know that you know them. Preservation of religion, preservation of the self, preservation of the intellect. We'll come to that. Preservation of the family, you can say, lineage, preservation of wealth, which is the economy, meaning also that it should be possible for honest people to make a living and to keep their money and to make it grow. You should have access to the halal. And then 6, honor, ird. Ird is very, very important. And this is what riba is really about. You must protect the honor of your brothers and sisters. Do not take lightly speaking about them things that detract from their honor, even though those things are true. Even though those things may be very bad. But if you have no need to say that thing, then you must not say it. And Islamic society is a society that seeks to build up the honor of each of us in our eyes, even though we may not all be honorable. But we build a society in which the basic assumption is your honor. That will be our default position. That will be our norm. And we will speak about each other honorably, and we will speak with each other honorably. And that makes civilization possible. That is extremely important. So we want to protect people's names. We want to give them good names. We want to protect their standing. And we want them to be respected as much as possible. In traditional societies, and this would be true of traditional Islamic societies, but this is true of most all traditional societies. Roman society, Greek society. What did the Romans care about more than anything else? Read their poetry. Honor. That was more important to the Roman than life, more important than wealth. Honor. Roman society was almost based on honor. And sometimes they went way too far in that, there's no question. But in many traditional societies, honor was very important. In European society and in American society, up until probably, I don't know when exactly, maybe after the Civil War for sure, if you offended a man's honor or his family's honor, he is very likely to challenge you to a duel to the death. And that became a problem. Many great people were killed, like Hamilton, in duels because they were believed to have offended the honor of another person who challenges them to a duel and kills them. We have in the United States, St. Louis, Missouri, East St. Louis, which is across the Mississippi. East St. Louis, for a long time, was not really inhabited. It was a place where men went to duel, and usually only one comes back. So we're not saying that's a good thing, but it's very important to understand how important honor is to human beings. Europeans may have gone too far. We didn't have dueling. We do have laws about slander. We didn't have dueling. We don't do that. We would regard that to be barbaric. But I just want to emphasize that a society needs to protect honor, and almost all societies did that in the past. Today, who cares anything about honor? We say anything we want. We ridicule the best of our people, the most honorable of our people. We go back through their biographical records, just trying to dig up dirt. Okay, this is really harmful. Again, these are things that will destroy the society. Yes, we have to be truthful, we have to be honest, but also there is a place for respect. There is a place for honor. And riba pertains to the dead, just as riba pertains to the living. Right? There is a man who wrote a book about Malcolm X, and he said about him horrible things. And that was all conjecture, no truth to it whatsoever. And that man published his book, and he died right after that. God took his life right after that. But, people like Malcolm X, we do not accept that anyone dishonors them. That's not objective discourse. No, Malcolm is a great man. We defend his honor. We stand by his honor. And we should do that for all of our community. That you are not going to insult this community. We will stand up for its honor. So this is very important. The Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, kullul muslimi ala al-muslimi haram, damuhu wa maluhu wa irduhu. All aspects of a Muslim are forbidden from being violated. His blood, his wealth, and his honor. Okay, this is every Muslim. You must protect their blood. You must protect their wealth. You must protect their honor. And it's pointed out here that the Prophet did not say in this hadith, which is a sahih transmission in Muslim, he did not say بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ or anything like that. In other, that everything about the Muslim is forbidden, his blood, his wealth, his honor, except by the right of God. That's not in this hadith. And it's not there, as commentators have pointed out, to emphasize the fact that don't take lightly any violation of these things. And look today at the world we live in. The blood of Muslims can be spilled, as if it had no value whatsoever. One great scholar said about these Muslims who kill innocent people right and left. He said, to them, the chicken has greater right that they slaughter to eat. At least they say, Bismillah, Wallahu Akbar. They don't say that when they kill innocent people. This is one of the signs of the end of time. They take property, they destroy property, they blow up houses and things like that. All of this is very heavy in the scale of misdeeds and honor. We must protect the honor of each other and the honor of people in general. The only exceptions to this are based on darura, absolute necessity. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. So we have to emphasize this, and again, we will talk a little bit about the exceptions. This is not very meaningful to most of us until we talk about the exceptions. But we have to see that the exceptions are to be regarded as very, very unlikely. Okay? And so we want to stop ourselves, from this characteristic of backbiting and not try to justify it in any way. In an authentic tradition, we are told about a day of fasting in Medina. Probably it was one of the days of Ramadan. And there were two young girls who were fasting. They were probably teenagers. But all day long, they were sitting next to each other, watching the people go by. And they were backbiting this woman, backbiting that man, talking about this one, laughing to each other, and then saying something else, and then laughing about that. And they took great enjoyment in that. That's what they were doing. And of course, many people do take great enjoyment in that. They like to joke about people. They like to laugh about people. Well, we don't do that. And so the Prophet asked that they be brought to him because he said, Lam tasuma, they did not fast. وَكَيْفَ يَصُومُ مَنْ ظَلَّ نَهَارُهُ يَأْكُلُ لَحْمَ النَّاسِ. And how could anyone fast who spent all of his day eating the flesh of the people? And then they were brought to him and he made them regurgitate. And the hadith says they spit up vomit and blood and pus. Forgive me. That's what the hadith says. That's ugly. But they spit that up. And the Prophet said, Inna hatayni samata amma ahalla Allahu lahuma wa aftarata ala ma harrama Allahu alayhima. جلست إحداهما إلى الأخرى فجعلتا تأكلان لحوم الناس. So he said, these two, and again he does this. This is a very strong lesson for them, very harsh lesson for them too. One of the harshest actually in the seerah. But this is to teach them, don't you ever do this, and to teach the people of Medina, do not do this. And of course people were watching them do it all day long. So he said, these two girls, they fasted by giving up what God had made permissible to them, which is food and drink. Okay, so they didn't eat, they didn't drink. That was permissible for them in times other than the fast. وَأَفْطَرَتَا عَلَى مَا حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمَا. But they broke their fast by consuming that which God had made forbidden to them, which is talking about the people. He said, each of them sat at the side of the other all day long, and they began to devour the flesh of the people, to talk about the people. So again, the Prophet takes the reference that is in the Quran about backbiting, and he emphasizes to us that that is literal. Archetypically it is. And even the fact that the girls vomit, because they didn't eat anything that was actually substantial. It shows that this is taking place on a very high spiritual level. And so therefore they actually regurgitate this filth. Imam al-Ghazali, may Allah be pleased with him, emphasizes to us And we've mentioned this before, that the companions, may Allah be pleased with them, had the habit of meeting each other with bishr on their faces, with happiness and smiles on their faces, and real happiness in their hearts. And their faces were filled with joy because their hearts were filled with joy. None of them would backbite the other in his absence. And again, when we go back to the hadith that we had of the two girls, this is a very strong punishment from the Prophet ﷺ. But these were the things he did, ﷺ, to institute the custom that we do not backbite each other. There is no license there at all, unless there is an absolute necessity to reveal something dangerous about a person. And the Sahaba, Ridwanullahi alayhim, regarded this to be their greatest deed. This was their greatest deed, that they did not backbite each other. They had no duplicity in their heart regarding each other. And they truly loved each other. And they regarded the contrary of this, to backbite the believers, and to come out with a frown on your face, and not to like them, not to be able to accept them, to be the mark of the hypocrite. This is the mark of the hypocrite. As Zabidi in his commentary, he says, and this is the quality of the matrudeen, of the people who have been expelled from God's mercy. So may Allah protect us from that. And may He enable us to take this seriously and to create around ourselves a culture of being really careful what we say. There's the beautiful hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr. And, let's repeat that hadith again, because it's about this also. Abdullah ibn Amr is a boy, very intelligent boy. And he's, of course, a companion. And he's sitting with the companions. And the Prophet says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that a man of the garden is about to enter the mosque. And so an Ansari came into the mosque. And we're told in the hadith that his beard was dripping from the water of wudu. He just made wudu and he was shaking his beard like this. And he had his sandals in his left hand. And he said, Assalamu alaikum. And he came into the mosque. And then the next day, the same thing happened. The same man came in. The third day, the same thing happened. The same man came in. So Abdullah ibn Amr, Allah be pleased with him, he said, I'm going to get to the root of this. Going to find out, what is this man's secret? He's one of the people of the garden. And so then he went to the man. The man's name is said to be Sufyan, but he is of the Ansar. And there are only 3 Ansaris named Sufyan. But we don't know which one he was. He was obscure. He was poor also. He just has one room he sleeps in. So Abdullah ibn Amr went to him and he said, I have had a disagreement with my father. I made an oath that I wouldn't sleep in his house for 3 nights. Could I sleep in your house? And he says, yes, you can sleep in my house. So he came into his house, and all night long, Abdullah ibn Amr watches him to see how many times does he get up to pray. He didn't get up at all. How many days does he fast? He didn't fast a single day. What does he do? Maybe at nighttime he goes out and gives sadaqah. Well, he's very poor. He didn't have any sadaqah to give. He didn't do anything. It was after Isha. He prays his shaf and witr. He goes to sleep. And he said, but every time he turned in bed, he would say, Allah, Allah, Allah. But he said, I began to despise his amal, his deeds. He doesn't do anything. Most of the Sahaba get up at night and pray. They fast maybe every other day. They recite the Quran. This man doesn't do anything. And then after 3 days, he said, look, there's no problem between me and my father. I heard the Prophet say, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about you the following: on 3 successive days, So I wanted to know, what is your secret? And I didn't find anything that impressed me. And he said, well, that's all there is. That's all there is. And so Abdullah turned to walk away. But Sufyan, he's thinking, because the Prophet did say that, there must be something. So he said, wait, come back. He said, there is something. I never go to bed at night, but that there is no duplicity in my heart. There is no hasad in my heart for anyone. Okay? And so there's no riba either. None of that. And Abdullah ibn Amr said, that's it. That's it. And that's what's so difficult to do. See, this is so important because this is worship of the heart. And for the Sahaba, this worship of the heart was the one that really counted. And indeed, it is important to pray. Indeed, it is important to fast. Indeed, it is important to recite the Quran. What would we be if we didn't do these things? And to do dhikr and other things, to give charity. But if you don't get the heart right, you expect these things are going to be right. It doesn't work like that. So the Sahaba then, they cared about their hearts. Imam al-Ghazali makes that point throughout the Ihya, that the Sahaba were all masters of the heart. They all watched their hearts. They took care about the heart. Al-Hasan al-Basri, who is one of the greatest of the successors, may Allah be pleased with him, he said, by God, ghiba is faster, is swifter in destroying a believing man's religion than gangrene destroys the body. When you get gangrene in the body, you usually have to amputate. And you usually don't have much time to do that. So he said, Wallahi, lal-ghibatu asra'u fi deen al-rajuli, al-mu'min min al-akilati fil jasad. So this will destroy your deen. This destroys our deen. And again, this is why we have to emphasize how dangerous this tongue is, even though it is so easy to use. This is why Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said, you've got to consider your tongue to be part of your amal. Eating the flesh of a dead brother would be amal. Would any of us even think about doing that? It is sickening to even think about it. But we don't think anything about backbiting. It's so easy to do. So we've got to get things right. And this is part of real understanding. Separating the real from what is illusion. Again, this sort of repeats what we've said before, but the Salaf would say, when we encountered those who were before us, we found that they did not regard worship to be in much fasting or prayer, even though they did that. They didn't take that lightly, but that's not the essence of worship. Rather, they regarded the essence of worship to be in holding oneself back from speaking about the honor of other people. Don't talk about the a'rad of other people. قال بعضهم أدركنا السلف وهم لا يرون العبادة في الصوم ولا في الصلاة ولكن في الكف عن أعراض الناس. Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him, he said, if you want to mention someone else's fault, then mention your own instead. That would be much more beneficial. That's legitimate backbiting. You can talk about your own faults and maybe ask people to help you. If you want to backbite someone, who is most deserving of all people that you backbite them? Your mother. Your mother. Who deserves your good deeds more than your mother? Right? So that's what they would say. If you have to backbite someone, backbite your mother, and then you can give her all of your good deeds. Malik ibn Dinar, may Allah be pleased with him, He's really one of the great successors. And he tells us many stories from Jesus. He's really an amazing man. It's said that Islam came to India through him. That Islam first comes to the subcontinent through Malik ibn Dinar. If you go to Kerala, which is a really beautiful part of India, it's the western coast of India, rains all the time. They have all kinds of beautiful fruits and trees and rivers. I don't know how many rivers they have in Kerala. It rains so much in Kerala, they can't even let the rice ripen in the field. It never dries. They have to cut the rice early and they have to cook it to make it edible. But Kerala is a beautiful place. And in Kerala, they believe that Malik ibn Dinar brought Islam to them. Some people doubt whether that's historically valid. Don't ever doubt that before a Muslim from Kerala. He won't invite you back, ever. But it is very possible that that's true, because Malik ibn Dinar lived in the city of Basra, and ships were always going back and forth between Basra and between Kerala and India, and what is today even Karachi. They would go back and forth. But Malik ibn Dinar, he transmits us a lot of information about Jesus. And I've mentioned before that those reports from him and from others, they really deserve to be studied carefully. And he says that once Jesus, peace be upon him, was with his disciples, and they passed by the body of a dead dog, the carcass of a rotting dog. And his disciples said, "How foul the stink of this dog." How horrible, is, the smell of this dog. And Jesus said to them, "But how very white are his teeth." And Al-Ghazali says that Imam Al-Ghazali did this to teach them that there's no reason why you should say anything bad about God's creation. God created the dog. God created the dog's death. God willed that the dog be cast to the side of the road. That's also a very insignificant part of God's creation. So there's no need to talk bad about it. We all know the dog stinks. We all walk by him. But look at his teeth. They're really white. So these are lessons that are of great use, great value. And this applies also to things like people. Like peoples. We should be very careful not to speak badly about any people, whoever they are, whether they are from this country or that country. That's not right to do. And to be careful to talk bad about lands. It's true, some places are not very beautiful. Some places are strikingly beautiful, but you don't have to say how ugly it was. That's backbiting too. It's said that when people curse a land, they say, "What an accursed land this is," that the land then says to God, "Oh God, curse that one of the two of us who is the most disobedient to you." And that would be who? That would be us, right? Because the land never disobeys God. So don't curse it. Don't curse cities, even though cities may be ugly. Don't backbite cities. Again, sometimes we have to talk about the bad situation. Don't backbite the weather. It's so hot, so humid, so cold. You're alive. You're okay. You would actually do better not to talk about that. If you look for evil, you will find it to no end of evil. If you look for good, you will find it to no end of good. Zainul Abidin, may Allah be pleased with him, he said, "Iyaka wal ghiba, fa innaha idamu kilabin nas." He said, beware of ghiba, stay away from ghiba, for it is the preferred food of the human dogs. This is what those humans who are dogs love to eat. They love to talk about people. They love to eat the flesh of their dead brother or dead sister. So you beware, don't you do that. Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, he said, "Alaykum bi dhikrillahi ta'ala, fa innahu shifa, wa iyyakum wa dhikrun nas, فَإِنَّهُ دَاءٌ. So Umar said, may Allah be pleased with him, hold to the invocation of God, the remembrance of God, for it is a cure. Beware of the remembrance of people, meaning the dhikr of people, meaning to mention people's faults, for it is a disease. So Imam al-Ghazali then repeats the definition of ghiba. Let's go over it one more time, if you don't mind. The definition of ghiba is that you mention something about your brother or sister that would displease him if he heard of it, if he heard that you had said it, whether it be a defect in his body, his lineage, his background, his family, his character, a deed he does, a word he says, a speech defect he may have, his religious practice, his dunya, his worldly life, maybe he's poor, his dress, his house, his mount, his donkey, his car. Like, why doesn't he get a new car? Right? We shouldn't talk like that. And again, when that thing is true, okay, that with the thing that you noted is true, but it's not proper to say it. That's backbiting. And it's not a light thing to do. As you know, it is extremely severe. You must not ever say that he's not good to his parents, even though he's not good to his parents. But what business is that of you? And why do you have to tell people? You don't have to say that he is a great liar, even though he is a great liar, unless there is an occasion where you have to say that. You don't have to say that he was a thief, even though he was a thief, even that he is a thief, if you are safe from him. You don't have to say that he drinks wine, even though he drinks wine, unless you have a strong reason to do that. You don't even have to say that he betrays his trusts, even though he does that, unless you have a necessity that means you have to say that. You don't even have to say he's an oppressor, even though he is. You don't say that he doesn't care about his salat or his zakat. Okay, so these are all examples that Imam al-Ghazali mentions. Again, there are situations where we would be required to mention these very things. But as a rule, when we're not required to do that, we don't do it at all. And again, this is to preserve the pillar of honor in our community and to build that pillar back, to put it back in place. You don't even say that he eats a lot, even though he does. You don't even say he talks a lot, even though he does. You don't even say he sleeps a lot. The Prophet ﷺ, a woman was mentioned in his presence. And it was mentioned how much she prays, how much she fasts, except for the fact that she offends her neighbors with her tongue. She has a sharp tongue. She says things that are very hurtful, and she backbites. And so, ذُكِرَتْ لَهُ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ إِمْرَأَةٌ وَكَثْرَةَ صَلَاتِهَا وَصَوْمِهَا وَلَكِنَّهَا تُؤْذِي جِيرَانَهَا بِلِسَانِهَا فَقَالَ هِيَ فِي النَّارِ. She will be in the fire. Okay? It doesn't mean that she will be there forever. Maybe she will come out of the fire. But again, what does this do? You see how all of these reports all come together and they substantiate each other. Because this hadith, it's a sahih hadith, no doubt you've heard it many times before, but this also drives home what the other reports drive home. Namely that for the Sahaba, you might worship a lot, pray and fast all the time, but if you did not have good character, and if you did not avoid things like backbiting, not to mention slander, then they didn't care anything about your worship, and they were trained to be like that. Imam al-Ghazali goes on to say that ghiba is not limited to the tongue. This is very important. Usually, classically, ghiba is done by the tongue. But he says ghiba was forbidden because it makes other people conscious of the deficiency in your brother or sister. You bring out a defect they have. Other people may have never noticed that, or even if they did notice it, they certainly didn't talk about it. Now you've brought it to the forefront. You make him known to others in a way that he or she does not like to be known. Okay, so this is the purpose. This is why ghiba is forbidden, not because it's speech. So any kind of speech, any kind of action that draws attention to the defect of your brother or sister, it is also going to be ghiba. It is also forbidden. And when we talk about lying, we didn't have time to do that, but when we talk about lying, we also talk about ta'reed. Ta'reed is when you find a roundabout way to say something. Okay, and generally, we don't want to lie, but a person may have asked us a question that it's not their right to ask, and we really don't want to answer. So you can find a way around it. When the Prophet ﷺ was making his hijrah, people asked him where he was from. Okay, so he says, I'm from Quraysh. If he says that, he gives away who he is. And then they will contact Quraysh, and they get a huge reward. So he's not going to lie. He said, Ana min ma'il Iraq. It's like, I am from the water of the loins. Okay, but it sounds like the water of Iraq. I'm from the water of Iraq. You see? So this is called ta'reed. Another, oh, you're an Iraqi. Okay, I remember once, I was in a mosque in a country where, a person, he thought I was an American, and I didn't like to be, and it's like, the way I felt about it is that, if I'm an American, then I'm really great in your eyes. If I were an Arab, I'm nothing in your eyes. And so this man came up and he says, Ya akhi, min ayna anta? Where are you from? So I said, min ma'il Iraq. This was during the Gulf War. He became silent. He turned around. He almost ran away. But I didn't lie. That was a ta'reed. So ta'reed is often a good thing. And we are often, intelligence is often measured by our ability to do that. One of the famous ta'reeds that I love very much is when Napoleon conquered Italy. Napoleon was an Italian. He was a Corsican. And he gathered together a group of the Italian aristocracy. And he said to them, all Italians are scoundrels. And one of the Italian women, he said, non tutti, ma buona parte. She said, not all, but many. Okay, but when she says many in Italian, it's Bonaparte. Bonaparte. His name is Bonaparte, right? So she said, not all, but Napoleon. He's a scoundrel. If she said that literally, she'd be in big trouble. But because she said it this way, he can't do anything about it. So ta'reed is very good. But ta'reed, when it comes to ghiba, is ghiba. That's the point we want to make. You can't speak, you can't beat around the bush or use circumlocutions if they bring the defect of your brother or sister to light. So in ghiba, ta'reed is just like explicit speech. Because people understand from it that your brother or sister has some defect, hidden or apparent, and it brings that to light. It focuses on it. And also, in ghiba, deeds are like words. So you can also do ghiba by imitating people, imitating the way they talk, imitating the way they walk, imitating other things about them. maybe the way they dress, whatever it may be. So you have to be careful. And our mother, Aisha, Allah be pleased with her, she's really beautiful, she's really wonderful, she's really truthful, but she's also very human. So once a girl, a young woman, came into her company with other young women who were sitting with her, and this woman wanted to speak to the Prophet. But this young woman was very short. She was extremely short. There's nothing wrong with that. When she left, Aisha went like this. She pointed with her thumb. See, like, she's like my thumb compared to my fingers. That's what she means. And the Prophet told her, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that's backbiting. You can't do that. You see? And so she learns from that. Again, it's very human. It's even humorous. But the Prophet taught her, don't do that. That's not right to do. No doubt the women with her laughed, but then the Prophet told her, don't do that. This is backbiting. So, we have to be careful about the things we write, the things we draw. We might write cartoons about people, draw things about people. It doesn't mean that cartoons are forbidden, especially cartoons of evil people. They're not forbidden because riba pertains to good people, believers in particular, and not to tyrants and others who are a big problem for us. Imitating and exaggerating people, like a limp or the way they walk. He said these are among the greatest forms of riba because they are the most effective. They are the ones that make you imagine that defect and maybe never forget it. You know, if you imitate the way a person walks or talks, we may never forget that. If you just made a statement about it, it might go in one ear or out of the other. He said also be careful about general statements about people who do certain things. When it is understood who that person is you mean. If that person is understood, that can be riba. When the Prophet ﷺ disliked something that someone did or someone said, he would say, مَا بَالُ أَقْوَامٍ يَفْعَلُونَ كَذَا وَكَذَا. He would say, what is the matter with people who do such and such a thing? But again, he doesn't do it right then in front of them. He doesn't do it in a situation where everyone knows right away who he's talking about. Imam al-Ghazali says the worst type, akhbath, the most impure type of riba, is hypocritical riba, especially of self-righteous people. And this can include even learned people, scholars, who probably don't practice what they learned. And it combines often riba with subtle praise or even prayer or even show or self-praise. And he gives us an example. Alhamdulillahi alladhi lam yabtalina bid-dukhuli ala as-sultan wat-tabadhul fi talab al-hutam. That so one really good, prominent person, he says, praise be to God who did not afflict us with the great trial of keeping the ruler's company, of kissing up to the ruler, or soiling ourselves by seeking the lowly things of this world. Okay, so he's talking about somebody else, and they know who he's talking about. And so this is riba. And Imam al-Ghazali says this is the akhbath type of riba. This is the most filthy type of riba, because he puts himself up while putting the other down. He doesn't mention his name, but everybody knows who it is. نعوذ بالله من قلة الحياء نسأل الله أن يعصمنا منها. We seek refuge in God. This is a dua from lack of humility, lack of shame. We ask God to protect us from it. What could be wrong with that? Well, because in context, he's speaking about another person who is understood not to have haya, to have lost it. So this becomes ghiba, even though he's put it in the form of a prayer to God, a dua, a supplication. And then he says, another example where some person of standing in society with lots of people around him. He says, ما أحسن أحوال فلان ما كان يقصر في العبادات يعني ما أحسن أحوال فلان ما كان يقصر في العبادات ولكن قد اعتراه فتور وابتلي بما ابتلي به كلنا. So he says, oh, what a good وهو قلة الصبر. He says, how excellent this person used to be. Not mentioning him, such and such a person. He used to be so good. He used to never fail to worship Allah. But then he was afflicted by a weakness and, inability to worship the way he used to. And he was afflicted by what we are all afflicted by. So Imam al-Ghazali says that is the worst kind of ghiba of all. ساءني ما جرى على صديقنا من الاستخفاف به. It really hurts me, to think of what has happened to our beloved friend, that people now take him so lightly. نسأل الله أن يروح نفسه. We ask Allah to give him peace, to put him at rest. So in this context, those words which sound so beautiful, Imam al-Ghazali said they can be the worst type of ghiba of all. Okay, he said, if you are truly sorry, if you do truly concern yourself about that person, then make dua for him in secret. And don't do it in public. Also, it is ghiba to listen to ghiba. And this is a big problem. And I know that you've even asked questions about that. And I don't know an easy solution to that. You may be in a circle of friends or relatives or elders who do this, and really, what can you do? You can't correct them. You may have to speak against it in your heart. You may have to pray for them, that God forgives them, that God helps them. But as a rule, whenever you can avoid listening to ghiba, then you want to avoid that. And especially, you don't want to encourage it. And in fact, this is what many people do. Many of us do this as well. In fact, someone may mention something about a person, like he's actually not careful about his prayer. Subhanallah, I didn't know that. Right? And so when you say that, you have encouraged that person to go further. So you don't want to do that. Act as if you heard nothing. There's no need to respond. That's amazing. I never heard that before. I never expected that to be true of him. So, these kind of words you can say. And maybe sometimes we say things like that because of the fact that we are uncomfortable. Maybe we don't want to be out of place. Maybe we don't want to offend people. But, no, don't encourage this in any way. Would you encourage them if they were drinking alcohol? Would you encourage them if they were taking drugs? Would you encourage them if they were doing some other monstrosity? No, you wouldn't. In fact, there you might be really careful. And here you are in a situation that is even worse. Even worse. So you try to find a way to bring an end to that. Maybe you can change the conversation. Maybe you can stand up for that person. And in the case of ghiba, you can actually contradict. Say, oh no, that's not true. He's not like that. He's much better than that. You must always try to defend the person as much as possible. And you must speak against this ghiba in your heart. Change the topic. Get up and leave. And one of the worst forms of ghiba is blackmail. Blackmail. That is riba. Sometimes it's slander, but often it is riba. And blackmail does happen in our community. There are instances when a person may have done things in the past that were not right, and they did tawbah from that. And this happens to men and to women. And a blackmailer will come and ask for lots of money, or he will show the pictures, or he will tell the story. So what should your response be? Stand against him like a brick wall. Don't pay a penny and deny everything he says because it's false. If you did something in your past and you did tawbah from that thing, you didn't do it. No one has the right to bring that out. So it's very important in the case of blackmail, that everybody stands strong against that and denies it. And the fact, well, maybe it's true. Maybe she wasn't a good Muslim at one time. Okay, but no one can bring that out now. So this is very, very important. And often in blackmail, let's say with a wife, maybe she had another past and she did tawbah from that. She is one of the best. And then the blackmailer comes. I'll tell your husband. Okay, well, let me tell your husband first. Because he had better stand up for you. And he had better stand in the face of this man. And of course, this is a crime. We will take him to court. But we do not submit to blackmail. Be strong if ever you or your friends are faced with blackmail. It is evil. It is ugly. That is probably the most akhbath type of riba. And sometimes, of course, it's not riba, it's slander. But again, you, by Sharia, must deny this. And the fact that maybe she did do that. No, she didn't do it. That's finished. That slate has been wiped clean. She did tawbah. God has forgiven her. This will not be in her sahifa. You deny it. And you deny anything, photographs, anything. Okay? And stand really strong about that. In our community, there should be no place for blackmail. No place whatsoever. What are we going to do with these questions?
Well, those are the ones from today.
Okay, yeah. But when are we going to find the time? Do you want me to stop and take time? Okay, well, let's talk about this because we should come back to the questions. Now I find myself trying to get through the material, which is not necessarily the best thing to do. So, inshallah, we can stop there. How many minutes do we have? We've got about 10 minutes. Okay. So, do you have any questions? Yes, you do. You do have questions. Let's see here. Stand-up comedians who use imitation to highlight racism, etc., are they considered to be backbiting? That is a dangerous profession. And we have some great stand-up comedians among us. In Australia, you have them as well, and in other countries. It's very important that the stand-up comedian have a mission, and that his or her mission be to defend the community and to defend the truth. And again, evil like racism, white racism, that's the most common type. There are other types also, but that is, of course, one of the really severe ones. We do attack white racism. We should be careful not to make it all white people. Okay, we need to be fair, but that's a dangerous thing to do. It's a very dangerous thing to do, but today we live in a society of talk shows, comedians, stand-up, and many of the people who do stand-up comedy, the ones that I know, they don't like it. They don't feel comfortable doing it. They have a lot of reservations. They have sought idhn from sheikhs to do it. and they seek to keep it above board. But they do it because somebody's got to be out there to speak for us. And comedy, strangely enough, is one of those medias that allows you to talk about things people wouldn't ordinarily talk about. So today, a stand-up comedian can actually talk about Islam and Muslims in a funny way, not to put them down, but in order to make them human in the eyes of other people. Okay? So this is a case where you have to do ijtihad, and al-harbu hila. War is stratagem. When you're on the battlefield, you have to have tricks. You have to have strategies. And, we need to be in the arena of the people who are talking, so that Muslims are humanized. And again, pray for our brothers and sisters who do this, that Allah keeps them well. And, they need to have spiritual discipline. A lot of them work hours and hours and hours and days on their presentations, so they need to get it as subtle as they can and as good as they can. Inshallah, Allah guide us. We have a Muslim politician in the United States, Keith Ellison. Some of you know him. He's a really good man. And he is a politician who, in my belief, is worthy of leading. Most of the politicians, they're not. They're people who are easily bought, and they're owned by other people. This is a big problem we face today in our country and many other countries. But Keith Ellison, who's from Minnesota, he says that, in politics, if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. So that's very important. We don't want to be on the menu, and we are a lot of people. There was a study done of non-Christian religions in the United States. And, this was put out on the internet, and they showed the density of non-Christian religions in all the counties of the United States. And according to that map, I may have gotten the statistics wrong, but according to the map, Muslims definitely look like the majority. There's certainly many more counties in the United States that have majority Muslim populations among the non-Christians than there are Jews. And the Jews would come in second. So there are a lot of Muslims in the United States. There are a lot of Muslims in Canada. Probably the communities are, in terms of proportions, about the same. And there are a lot in other countries. We have significant numbers, and we've got to stand up. We've got to be counted. We can't be passive. And, you saw this horrible documentation of this crime, of the murder, the cold-blooded murder of a beautiful brother and two beautiful sisters. Okay, now the man who did that, probably they will say he's insane. And indeed, he may have been insane. His behavior does sound like that, of an insane person. But what would make him do that? What he hears on the radio. To me, in my mind, the criminal here is the media. Because they are the ones who pull the trigger that's in the minds of people like that, so that they can come up and carry out an execution. Allah protect us. And there's a lot of that happening now. We've got to make that known, and we've got to stand up for our protection and for our rights. How do we understand honor? People kill their own children in the name of preserving their family honors. No, that is wrong. And, before I was saying that the Romans were people who, if you want to talk about classical Roman civilization, the Roman usually puts honor number one. He will easily give his life in the place of his honor and his wealth. But his honor, no. He wants his honor to be protected and the honor of his family. Okay? So this is a Mediterranean quality. And the Romans had these things like honor killings. Okay, we get that from non-Islamic traditions. And these are distortions of honor. Okay, so this is not honorable. These are not things that we do. This is very, very wrong. Often the person says this involves marriage as well, that it is a dishonor to our family to marry so-and-so. Again, there are many scenarios for things like that. I don't want to make a sweeping across-the-board judgment, but again, marriage is one of the problems that we face in our community. And usually it's some idea of honor that is there. So, in the case of the immigrant community, God bless them, who represent about 2/3 of the American Muslim community. They left their homes in Hyderabad. They left their homes in Punjab, in Damascus and other places, and they came to Canada. They came to the United States, where they're mixed with Muslims from all over the world, as well as converts. And, it's not unreasonable if you live in Hyderabad that you want your son or daughter to marry someone who's from Hyderabad. We'll be neighbors. We'll be closer. But in Toronto, in Chicago, in San Francisco, and the pool is not that big anyway. And now you've reduced the pool to a puddle? How do you expect them to get married? And I know a case of a person who took, she's not his daughter, she's his niece, to a gathering of Muslims in Chicago put on by Iman, Inner City Muslim Action Network. And he introduced her to an African-American brother who's a very good Muslim and who is a very hard worker. And this man loved that man. So he introduced his niece to him. Well, the fact that you do that can easily be interpreted as, why don't you get married? She probably thought of it like that. Why is my uncle introducing me to him? And he thought of it as that, and they fell in love. And then that same man became outraged, and he threatened to kill the person. And he called him by the worst words thinkable. Even the brother said that any white person who would ever call me by this, I'd probably kill him. But since I did ask for the hand of his niece, her father was deceased, then I won't do that. And this was about their honor. No, I'm sorry, this is dishonorable. This is very dishonorable. Things have got to be balanced. Honor is extremely important, but it has its place. Then the person says maybe they emotionally blackmail people by this reference to honor. So that's a very good question. And this is we have in Islam, da'wah is very important, right? How did the Muslims understand da'wah for most of our history? Going out and spreading Islam among the non-Muslims? Yes, that comes in there. But the main purpose of da'wah is teaching the community, calling the community to God. Everyone in this room says, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Okay, but we need to know about backbiting. That's da'wah. We need to know about honor. That's da'wah. This is da'wah. This is what would be called da'wah traditionally. It's teaching, but it's also you've got to keep your community educated. You've got to bring things clearly to mind for them. So important for us to do that. And there's so many things in our community that need to be worked on. And usually they're not completely wrong, but they get out of proportion. They get out of balance. I've heard many women will go to hell because of their speech. Is that true? Many women and many men. This is not, this is equal opportunity employment. The Prophet warned us about kufran. This is probably what the sister, I assume that's the sister, is referring to. It's not about speech, but it's about kufran. Kufran is ingratitude. And kufr comes from the same root. And in fact, kufr and kufran do mean the same thing. It's just that in usage, we usually use them differently. So we usually use kufran for ingratitude. It stays there. That's what it originally means. And we use kufr for a special type of ingratitude, which is disbelief. What are the elements of kufr? First of all, what is the opposite of kufr? Because kufr originally means ingratitude. So the linguistic opposite of kufr is not iman. It is shukr. It is gratitude. What is gratitude? Gratitude has two elements. The first is recognition. That you recognize that good has been done. Okay? Are babies grateful? Are little children grateful? No. They're not, because they don't recognize what you've done. The baby will cry until it is nursed. And then it will cease crying and go to sleep and cry again when it wants to nurse again. Is it grateful for being nursed? No. It expects to be nursed. It has to be nursed. And the mother, God bless her, she will get up to nurse the baby all times of day and night, even though it pushes her to her physical limits. Okay? The baby's not grateful for that. The baby doesn't understand how difficult this is for the mother. Okay? So the baby is not ungrateful nor grateful. Gratitude requires recognition, that you recognize the good that is done for you, and therefore you want to never fail to recognize. When people have done good to you, you keep a list in your mind of the good they have done, and don't begin to delete it. And many of us do that. Men do it and women do it as well. You never did me a good deed ever. I've heard that from women, and I've heard it from men as well. Okay, and that is ingratitude, because it is failing to recognize that, no, you did many good things. But we become very angry, we become very perplexed, and we just say, no, all of that is spoiled. Maybe you never had a good intention, you did that for the wrong reasons, there might be something going on. That's ingratitude. And that is a big evil. And that puts people in the fire. So gratitude is recognition, and then it is proper response to what you recognize. Two elements. So never forget the good that a person did you. This is one of the distinctions between the kareem and the la'im, between the noble person and the ignoble person. The noble person will never forget a good that you did for them. Even if you just taught them one letter of the alphabet, they will never forget, you taught me that letter. The kareem or the kareema, the noble man or woman, they remember all the good that other people did to them, even if those people were their enemies. And they never fail to respond appropriately. Thank you again for what you did. I'm so thankful for the help you gave me. The la'im, you can do good to him for years, and then he will forget it, as if you never did anything. I know of a great family. They are from Ahlul Bayt. And, they were also in charge of the gold market of Musawwa, which is one of the ancient cities of Eritrea. And they were Ahlul Bayt, and they were rich, and they were good. And nothing wrong took place in the gold market because they were there. especially the head of the family. He was a Sayyid, and he was very strong. And he made sure that all the dealings in gold were done properly. And then, in the 1970s, they were turned into refugees. And they had to go to other lands. And sometimes they went to lands where there were people that they had helped for over 30 years, that they had given food to, that were poor in those days. And they would take them in and they would help them. And sometimes those people would say, "What can we do for you? We will do anything for you." And in some cases they would say, "No, sorry, I can't help you." And it's like they forgot everything. That is kufran. That is ingratitude. So kufr and kufran, they also have two elements. They involve the element of recognition. That you do know that that person did good for you, but you refuse to acknowledge. Okay, I say, "No, you never did me any good at all." No, you know he did good to you, but you refuse to acknowledge that. And then you respond to that recognition in a way that denies it. That's kufr. That's very important because disbelief in Islam and also in Hebrew religion is called kufr. And that's because of the fact that the kafir knows that what the Prophet is teaching, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is true. Abu Lahab didn't know that his nephew was an honest man, a sound man, a good man, a trustworthy man, that he only speaks the truth and that what he is teaching is the truth. Yes, he knew that. Did he recognize it? He refused to acknowledge it. So he is a kafir. He is a kafir. Abu Jahl, the same thing. And the story of Abu Jahl is very interesting. Okay, the story of Abu Jahl is very interesting. But this is also important for us because often today we use the word kafir with great ease. Like, the non-Muslim is a kafir. Oh, wait, be careful. Be careful. Yes, they are non-Muslims. They don't believe in Islam. Do they know anything about this religion? Do they have any good opinion about this religion? In light of what they see in the media every day, do you expect them to welcome this religion? What have you done to make this religion beautiful in their eyes? Because prophets come and messengers as the most beautiful human beings, with the most beautiful lineage, the most beautiful physique and faces and voices, in order to establish the proof of the truth of their claim, so that people have no justification in not believing. This is what you are supposed to do. This is what I am supposed to do. That's why we're supposed to create a community that is beautiful, that is loving, that serves, and that embodies the light of the Prophet ﷺ, and that takes the proof of this religion to all people. Once you do that, then you'll see who's the kafir, because they are there. Yes, many of the people who are behind the media stunts and the noise, which is called news, those are kafirs. And many of them know that you have a religion which historically can never be overcome by any other religion, because that's a historical fact. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله. He, God, is the one who sent his messenger with the truth and with guidance and the religion of truth to establish it over all other religions. Okay? That's exactly what happens in the history of Islam. Whenever Islam becomes the neighbor of Christians, no matter whether they are Catholics or Protestants or Orthodox or Nestorians or Jacobites or whatever it may be, they will convert. It may take 200 years. It may take 250. But as they come to know about Islam, they will always come into it. History has proven that. Where? In Libya, in Tunisia, in Morocco, in Egypt, in Syria, here in Turkey, Anatolia, throughout history. Christians know that. Whenever Christians live with Muslims, and Muslims are free to talk and to speak, Christians will begin to convert. It always happens that way. And therefore, they're worried very much about our presence in Europe and America, that Islam will become the religion there. And many of them know that you don't have a chance unless you begin to lie and to attack and to distort and to keep Islam from the minds of the people. Make it the enemy. The Crusades were based on this. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf talked about the Song of Roland. Okay? That's the big propaganda document, lie, that is behind the Crusades. A falsification to the nth degree. This is what they've done in the past. So there are people there who are our enemies, and don't expect them to cease to be that way. But most of the people are not like that. Most of the people don't know. They don't have a clue. And if they knew what you believe and how beautiful your religion is, they would embrace it. I know of a woman who was from a fundamentalist Christian Protestant background. And, she heard that this is the religion of Satan, Islam, and you've got to stamp it out. This is long before 9/11. And then she began to look in the internet, about Islam, and she became convinced that Islam is the truth. In fact, she had a dream in which she was in a helicopter over the ocean, way up in the sky. And the pilot said, the helicopter's about to crash. You've got to jump. And she was terrified. You jump into water from that height, it's like jumping on concrete. And then she began to say, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. And she jumped. And she fell in the water as if it were feathers. And she could breathe in the water. And beautiful fish that were psychedelic came up to greet her. And she came out in the garden. She had that dream. She told me she had that dream. This is God's religion. This is God's religion. And so we have to make it known to the people. Whenever Islam encounters Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Confucianism, Taoism, shamanism, animism, atheism, in history, it always wins in the end. We have a perfect record. The only way to turn that back is violence. And again, we don't want to create enmity. But what is the most violent religion in history? Christianity. I can prove it to you. Talk about the Inquisitions, talk about the Crusades, talk about the Holy War. You're going to talk about us and violence? Did you forget about your own history? You have Alzheimer's disease? National Alzheimer's disease? That's one of the big problems in the United States today. We have national Alzheimer's disease. We don't know history. We forgot it all. We don't know anything about the past. Islam is a powerful religion, but it has to show its beauty. It's got to establish the prophetic hujjah. And this is what you have to do. This is what you're required to do. You've got to learn this religion. You've got to love this religion. You've got to embody this religion. And then you've got to make communities that show the world what Islam really is. I come from Nebraska, the Sandhills of Nebraska. Beautiful place. No people. Very few people. Buffalo. Those people, if they knew what this religion is, wallahi, I don't doubt for a minute they would be among the best Muslims going. Now, I told you the story when I became a Muslim and I went to see my cousins in western Kansas. My mother's family is western Kansas. My father's family is the Sandhills of western Nebraska, the land of Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull. Those were my heroes when I grew up. But they didn't know what Islam was. And in fact, most of them thought it's a pretty good idea. Now, after 9/11 and all of this propaganda that has been poured out over not just 15 years, over many years, many of them now, it's like they wouldn't give you the time of day. They're afraid of us. They have been taught to be afraid of us. They fear us. And so what do? We want to flip the coin. Flip the coin of hate into the coin of love. And we can do that. And we do it by action, which is intelligent and wise, creating communities, serving people, showing them who we really are. And if these people come into Islam, wallahi, I believe they will be really good. They're my people. I love them. I believe in them. I grew up with them. They are people who are honest at heart. They're good people. And inshallah, Allah enable us to be really wise and not to be afraid and to have self-esteem and to go forward in a brilliant way, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. اللهم وفقنا لما تحبه وترضى وجعلنا من عبيدك السعداء وأمتنا على كلمة الهدى علمنا ما ينفعنا ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما آمين آمين. Be very sad to leave you, but when we leave, we have to stay together. How many a neighbor is far away? How many a person who's far away is a neighbor? We want to be neighbors. We want to stay neighbors, even though we might be a long way away. And we live in a world where it's easy for us to know each other and to work together, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And again, the very instruments that are used for our destruction, the media and other things, they can also be used to tell the truth. They can also be used to turn the tables, and we've got to do that. May Allah make it easy for us. Ameen.